Doing really well so far, huh? Let's set the stage. These are actual headlines gathered about millennials for the past year or two. And these are from credible publications, Boston Globe, Ogilvy. We see here, millennials are a generation of idle trophy kids, but they're actually the new age heroes. They're the new generation of hippies, but with better weed, but actually they're not. They are some of the world's least skilled people, the best workers, and maybe they're actually not as different as you thought they were. Clear as mud, right? So I'm Jen. For those of you who don't know me, I do social media for alumni and development at UConn. Big UConn fan, as you can see from my wedding picture. I used to do social for Case. You might have seen me hanging around Case SMC for a while. I researched young voting trends in 2008, where I interviewed consultants about the voting habits of millennials as a part of a study with Pew and Georgetown. And I am actually a millennial, albeit on the older end. And in fact, if we look at millennials, and the dates vary on this, but read generally between 1980, 1982-ish to 1998. About that, that's the generation we're talking about here. I've got a younger brother and sister in the middle, and then a youngest sister who I'll come back to later, who's in your key demographic, some of you. She's 18, about to go to college in the fall. But why do we care? Why are there so many articles written about millennials? There seems to be this anxiety about this particular group of people since the early 90s when the term was coined. It reached a spike in 2003, 2004. I don't know if any of you remember the Deanie babies around the Howard Dean campaign. Really explosion of millennial articles then. And it's really been going steady ever since. So why are the clickbait articles still coming? Well, there are students, there are alumni, there are donors, and for those of you at independent schools, they're starting to be our parents. So there are a large chunk of people we're trying to reach. So we're going to start by going into some of the common stereotypes about millennials, go into actual numbers and data and stuff about millennials, figure out why age is not the best way to learn how your people use social media, and then figure out ways you can. All right. Common stereotypes. There's an assumption that millennials are easy to categorize. So can anyone toss out some phrases you hear in conjunction with millennials? Selfish, lazy, entitled. Yeah. I came up, sorry? Peter Pan syndrome, never want to grow up, lives with their parents forever. Yep, so I have narcissistic, really short attention spans. You have to make everything really short and snackable. Want trophies for everything. That's a good one. And they are entitled. Yeah, so we're starting to come up with some terms about this group of people. This is a quiz from Time Magazine from 2013. How millennial are you? This is a great one. I took it. Here's some of the questions. You've waited in line for cupcakes. You've taken a selfie while waiting in line for cupcakes. You don't know what gluten is, but it's definitely bad. So now, in addition to all these negative terms we're getting, they're kind of frivolous. They go along with the flow, with the trends without really thinking about it. But I got 20%, which translates to epic fail. Only 20% millennial. So very upset about that. And a persona starts to develop. This is, if you can't see it, from McSweeney's Internet Tendency, Monty Python for Millennials. Setting aside for the fact that Monty Python's hilarious all the time. This is the Knights Who Say Twee, which gets into a persona of, the Zooey Deschanel, Wes Anderson, hipster kind of fixie bicycles, handlebar mustaches, getting back to that Peter Pan syndrome, never really growing up. But what do we actually know? What does the data tell us? This data is from Pew from the last year, and this is US-centric. We know that they're a big group of people. They're actually bigger than the baby boomers now. They're fairly diverse compared to the previous two generations. It's 57% white versus about 2/3 for Gen X and more than 3/4 for baby boomers. They're more likely to be politically independent, but when you read an article about millennials being politically agnostic, you're leaving out half the population. less likely to be religiously affiliated, but that's still 70% who are. And they're slightly more likely to be college educated in their early 20s than previous generations. And as far as we know, they're humans. The non-human population of millennials is not statistically significant. This becomes important later on. So they're big and diverse. They cannot be monolithic, right? This goes for other generations too. Baby boomers are known as the me generation. That doesn't talk about all boomers. Likewise, the kind of frivolous live at home with their parents stereotype that emerges does not apply to millennials in all cases. And to some extent, these boundaries end up getting drawn by the media. It's really easy to write a clickbait article about millennials. You take some of those facts that I showed you up there, talk to two millennials on the street, look at their handlebar mustaches, and then make generalizations about an entire trend. This is starting to happen for Generation Z too, and it has happened for the me generation back in the 60s. And the Gen X, I don't forget you, even though I know you love to be forgotten because that's your stereotype. Plenty of articles written about you as well. The problem with this is that if you are a boomer, you are more likely, as this quote suggests, to accept that as reality, when in fact you're creating distance between you and the people you're trying to reach. When really what we want to do is find common ground. So I made up a new quiz, the How Not Millennial Are You quiz. Let's take it together, shall we? Millennials hate generic blast marketing, which implies that not millennials prefer it. So raise your hand, anyone. You really love generic blast marketing. Being treated like a number, anyone? Okay, all right. Millennials love being talked to like they're humans. Anyone hate that? You hate authentic communication. I'm getting crickets. Okay, all right. Millennials are the Amazon generation, I hear. They're smart, savvy shoppers, which means that not millennials are dumb shoppers. Anyone here think of themselves really dumb consumer? I kind of do sometimes. Yeah. All right, so we've gone into some stereotypes, kind of started looking into why they don't work all the time. Let's dig a little deeper. You probably saw this article. It was written back in January by a 19-year-old from the University of Texas, Andrew Watts, really popular when it first came out. Teens' view of social media. He goes through several popular social networks and whether or not teens use them. He says Facebook is, quote, dead to us, but he also likens it to a P.O. box where everyone has to have one. He also uses groups and Facebook messages. So it's dead, but not quite dead. To use another Monty Python reference, it's not dead yet. A direct quote, a lot of us simply don't understand the point of Twitter. But he does like Instagram, Tumblr, and Snapchat, and they use it frequently, and we'll get into why later on. This is also might be a little hard for you in the back to see. This is a screenshot from a Pew study. We find that, however, people, including his actual demographic, use Facebook, and use increased from 84 to 87%. Now, I know there's other studies out there that show the slightly younger set, the 13 to 18, use decreased, but that's still a large percentage of people using them. We also find that the group of people using Twitter increased from 2013 to 2014. 6% in the last, from 2013 to 2014. Dana Boyd wrote a response to this article. It's fantastic. Highly encourage you to read it. An old fogey's response to a teen's view of social media. She is a researcher studying teen use of social media. She's done it for more than a decade. She teaches at Columbia. She works at Microsoft. And while it's true that the teens' use of social media as portrayed by Andrew Watts is accurate for some people, it's not accurate for all people. And that becomes really important, especially when it comes to Twitter. Now, we all know that Twitter is important to us, just looking at the hashtag, but it's important in more intense ways too. We've seen with Black Lives Matter, Muslim Lives Matter, if they gun me down as a response to the rash of police violence since Ferguson and the shootings in North Carolina. That is a tool for activism. And these are people that are on your campus. In fact, the Muslim Lives Matter hashtag took place in Chapel Hill, the incident that spurred it, rather. Teen use of social media is not just shaped by age. It's shaped by who they are, their race, their geography, their class, their culture. They all play a part. And this is important because if you are an educational institution and one of your goals is to provide access to a high quality, higher education experience for anyone who wants it, then it is your responsibility to listen to those conversations too. 70% of people in a certain age group might not use Twitter, but those 30% who do, those are your people too. And those are conversations you need to be paying attention to because they do affect your campus. In addition to that, changes in technology play a part in how we market and communicate. It wasn't so long ago that blast marketing was all we had. We had a giant sign on the side of the building. We had phone calls, but we didn't know who called what restaurants, who dialed the admissions offices of which colleges. But now we have the ability to track those behaviors. And we see here that saying millennials are tech savvy and really are at the forefront of shaping social media use discredits other generations. This is also more Pew data. People 65 plus, 11% increase in the use of Facebook. And you know, it could be for pictures of grandkids or pictures of kids, but the point is that they're on there. And now that we have left this conference and are absolutely going to set aside a budget to boost Facebook ads, right? Yes, absolutely. We know for sure that it's not a dead network, and people of all ages are shaping how these networks evolve, what features happen, what are they used for? They might be used for grandkid pictures for some, they might be used as a PO box for others, but they're still going strong. And really, we all know that if baby boomers had selfie sticks in the 60s, they would be taking amazing selfies in Woodstock. We all know this. Boomers, they're the original me generation. They want their selfies, you know. And we've seen the same thing with Obama and Neil deGrasse Tyson. I believe they all took a selfie together. So it's not just a millennial habit. Alongside the generational millennials are X articles, are the Facebook is dead, Twitter is dead. I think the death of every social network has been predicted. And with some exceptions like Ello. Anyone remember Ello? Yeah, everyone have an account that's like just languishing? Yeah, me too. They tend to not completely die off. DeviantArt, LiveJournal, they're still around. One of the biggest tools, one of the most frequent tools I use to listen to conversations about UConn is an online forum. And those things have existed since what, like the early 90s? Conversations amongst alumni of all decades are talking on this listserv, usually about basketball, but still, they're conversations worth listening in on. And really what happens is that as networks evolve, they're used differently. Take a look at Twitter again. When Twitter first evolved, it was, I'm going to tweet my breakfast and then take a picture of my breakfast and tweet it, right? Now it's being used as a second screen experience when you're watching the Super Bowl. Or we go back to the activist tool. It's being used to create change. In addition to where you come from, how many countries you lived in, whether you like college basketball or synchronized finger painting, and the tools that become available as you express these interests, momentous changes in society affect everyone. Historical events happen that have ripples beyond the generation on which they occurred. Baby boomers are known as the maybe a JFK assassination or the moon landing or the defining events for baby boomers. Millennials were known as the 9/11 generation at one point. A lot of them came of age as 9/11 occurred, but all three of those events had effects beyond 1969 or 2001. Here's a thing I hear a lot. I love this quote. Alumni used to give back because it was the right thing to do. Alumni in previous decades gave money to their alma mater because they were more morally upright, upstanding citizens than alumni today. Yeah, no, we're all on board with that. I think so. But is that true? Are they more moral? Or as Keith touched on this yesterday, is it because debt is skyrocketing? Is it because the transaction between college and student and the dividends it paid are no longer as guaranteed as they used to be? This chart here shows declining state support for a lot of universities as tuition increases over the last 13 years. We also see public trust in government, in media, and other large institutions for a variety of reasons is declining. And that is not just among millennials, that is among everyone. And of course, when you graduate, it might not be, you could have gotten a solid education with good job prospects, but the economy took a turn for the worse, and there you are, going back to your parents' house. And this is true for non-traditional students too. These increased debts are often taken on by parents. It doesn't just affect millennials. Really, what it comes down to is that generational stereotypes are a crutch to lean on when people are taking a look at what is changing in the world around us. It's not necessarily about a generation of people being more or less moral, more or less ethical than others. It's a term that's used to create a sense of urgency. Millennials are the kids these days. I'm sure with the articles about Generation Z, those will be my kids these days. I'm looking forward to it. But marketing communications grows more sophisticated, and it grows more sophisticated talking to different groups of people. So when you're looking at an article about millennial clickbait, just replace millennials with what do I need to do to adapt to the world around me? So let's go into how actually to do that. How do you communicate with your people? Let's go back to my 18-year-old sister. Her name is Kaylee. She's going to college in the fall, and she falls into the very end of the millennial spectrum. And there's a lot of differences between us. For example, she got a smartphone in high school. I got a dumb Nokia cell phone in college. She does not remember life before computers or the internet. I do. I used word processors, and then those the Apple IIe 16-bit Oregon Trail in 5th grade, the dot matrix printers, yes. She never flew until she was 5, so she does not remember an airport without security lines, whereas many of us flew security line free until well into high school or college or beyond. I don't know any of the shows or music artists she listens to. They're weird and unfamiliar to me. Whereas my references are awesome and culturally relevant and very hip. She has a whole other vocabulary that I am frantically searching for meaning on. I do not know. You know, Mupload, anyone heard this word, Mupload? It's not a tech-savvy Muppet, as I was very disappointed to hear that. For those of you who don't know, it means mobile upload, so posting it on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. On Fleek, I've heard a few of you guys use that one. Anyone want to volunteer? What on Fleek? Yeah, you're channeling Beyonce. Yeah, absolutely. We all aspire to be on Fleek, I think, regardless of how old you are. But I don't use that phrase at all. I don't, yeah. But we both have a lot of similarities too. We felt nervous about leaving home after high school. We talked with our friends to figure out where we were going to apply and where we were going to go on tours. Maybe we went on tours with our friends. We didn't know what we wanted to do after college. We maybe had a vague idea, but we weren't 100% sure. But we wanted to go to a place where we felt like we belonged. If 84% of alumni say they have an amazing college experience, we wanted to have that. We wanted to be a part of that. I'm going to go back to Andrew Watts, actually. He wrote a sequel to his original article on how teens use social media. And I'm taking a few of his quotes out of context because I think they're relevant. The first one is engage your users in a way that's not only targeted, but is also something innovative they want to talk about. It's like 3 bingo squares, right? I think so. But really the point is be brave, be new, try something different. The way that the internet has evolved has put a premium on innovation and creativity. So you have to embrace it. He was talking about Yik Yak when he said whatever is funny or relevant is at the top and everything else goes to the bottom. But that's true for other social networks as well. Be funny and relevant. And this was illustrated well yesterday. And don't underestimate the power of word of mouth. Word of mouth is always going to be a huge driver of college choices, of consumer choices. It's going to extend well beyond the life of Yelp. I'm an English major. I was an English major in college. Anyone else? Yeah, in the house. Gonna have a book club. And even for those of you who weren't, we all read classic works of literature in high school. And I feel like it's powerful because it's a ritual in some ways to read works of literature that have been studied and read and analyzed for hundreds of years. And the reason is because those stories endure. People come from all different backgrounds, but they go on a journey. They go endure some struggle. There's some action, rising action, falling action, and they come out at the end of the novel a changed person. And I think that's a really powerful way to start finding common ground with people who are not born the same year as you were. Some people might want the classics. Emma, that's a good one, right? Early 1800s. That book is still read over and over and over. It's a beloved book. And some people want a refresh. This is the same story, but apparently by refresh, I mean 20 years old, but still, it's a great movie. But it's really the same story. So it's another way of saying that tools change, people don't. This is a pretty straightforward piece of advice here. Want to know where people are hanging out and what they're talking about? Ask them. I'm going to give a shout out to Megan, University of Illinois. Yeah, Megan. She has created an Is This Stupid committee, and I love it. You could create it for alumni, donors, first generation students. Have a representative sampling of the people you're trying to reach. When you're trying to start a campaign, ask these people, call them up, have them in person, email them, say, is this stupid? And if they say yes, tweak it. Pay attention to the new networks that are emerging. I'm not saying to completely disregard anything about new generations or new tools or new data, because it's important to stay on top of that. But when you're looking at it, when you're looking at a new network, pay attention to what's going on there. Don't just barge in. Pay attention to conversations. The reason why Andrew Watts loves Tumblr, Snapchat, and Instagram is because it's not necessarily tied to their identity and they can be their true selves on there. And one of the reasons that specifically he doesn't like Instagram is because it's free of listicles, advertisements for the most part, brands, brands trying to be clever. It's just among them. It's just among their peer group. This is also true in many cases for Snapchat. So if you are going to delve into a new network, make sure you do it in a way that is clever, relevant, answer some of those questions, or else you're going to be like the dad at a school dance. No one wants to go on a new network and do the funky chicken when everyone else is not doing the funky chicken. I'm giving you all, let's all give ourselves permission to not click on these articles. But if you do, read between the lines. Don't go straight to, oh, Generation Z is really good at giving to causes. So that must mean that's true for everyone and I don't have to worry about it. Figure out what actually is going on with trends and communications tools. But, when it comes down to it, we have a lot of stuff to sift through. There have been so many takeaways from this conference, really just mind exploding. Let's take one section out. Let's just not click on them at all, because that time that you spend worrying about what the next generation is doing, you could spend actually talking to them. Questions or comments? No. All right. Thank you.